Well, welcome to part 3 of our exploration of the Vue JavaScript framework and how we can use it to build forms, HTML web forms. We've been looking at a number of different fields that can take in data and some that output data. All of them deal with numbers or letters and a single value. Well, we're going to be moving on to some slightly different data types today. First, we're going to be doing there we go. First, we're going to be doing Boolean. There we go. Boolean values. So a Boolean value is just basically a true or false. And we do that using the input type equal to checkbox. So let's just save it and see what a checkbox looks like. There you go. It's checked or unchecked. Pretty straightforward, simple. But let's make it a little more useful. Agreed. Now I chose this label because it is very common to say, do you agree to these terms and conditions before submitting this form? So I have got a V model there, which we have to store our value in. So we have to go up here and create our place to actually store the value, the true-false value for agreed. And we have to make it a reference so that it is read and writable. And our default value is false. Alright, let's just do a refresh so we can see the agreed variable over here. There it is, default false, true, false, true. Pretty straightforward. Vue gives us one more thing to deal with a single true-false value. True value equals, we'll say yes, and false value we'll say equal to no. Oh, here we go. If I can put it in the quotes properly, that's better. All right, so we've got flipping back and forth between true and false, and now we flip back and forth between yes and no, and that is Boolean values. Fairly straightforward. So I'm just going to take that Boolean value and put it near the bottom. Okay. What we're going to be dealing with now are lists of values. And there's a way to transition between our input values and our list of values, and that is using a data list. I've created this data list in pure HTML. It's got 3 options, and those options are numbers, so I gave it the ID of nums. So let's see what it looks like over here. It looks like nothing. There's nothing here. What's going on? Well, we have to use our data list in conjunction with an input tag. So let's do a refresh again. What does it look like? It still looks like nothing. And there we go. What we've got here is a suggested list of completion values. So I can show you, since these are numbers, I'm going to show you much simpler on the number field here. There we go. So we've got at 0 it suggests a 50 completion. 1, there's nothing. 2, it suggests a 25 completion. 3, 4, 5, all of the values contain a 5. 6, 7, 75. So that is how it works. I'm going to show you how it works with a range. So there's our range field, and as I save it, you'll notice that these little ticks show up underneath. So now I can jump around, and here I'll just make this 0 again so that we can see our values. So you see it, we jump around and it snaps to each one, and it gives us little ticks where our suggested completions are. Now we could keep doing this for almost all the input fields. It won't work to text area because text area is not an input field, and it won't work with password because password is, you don't want to be giving suggested values for a password. Color, that's a nice one to look at. You should try that one out yourself. Put a little color code option and see what that looks like. All right, we're going to be moving on to Vue and DataLists. So let's create a list in Vue. There we go, the days of the week. I think that's pretty straightforward. Everyone can understand the days of the week. And do a data list. There we go. And, oh, not a legend. Options. Options. Good. So what are our options going to be here? Well, we want to fill it in with each one of these values in our days of the week up here. We do that using a for loop. And what we do is we want to take each value in the days of the week, and then we'll use that value and print it out as the option. And there we go. That will do it. In order to use this data list, though, we have to give it an ID, and we'll call this days of week, something nice and descriptive. And to use it, we need to associate it with a input field, days of week. All right, let's do a refresh over here to be sure it's all working. See, that data list, the nums data list is still working, and now this one's working. See, it gives us all 7. See, it only shows 6 days of the week at a time, 6 values. So you see a T, any day that has a T in it, or Y, any day that has, all days have a Y in it. So that helps us create data lists easily. You see, it's only one option we had to write. Nice little loop. Now there is another part of data list where we can specify the value, and we're going to say val, and days of the week, we don't need the full days of the week. We can just slice out the first 3 characters, M-O-N-D-A-Y, Monday, or M-O-N. That's just enough. So let's see. We've still got it here, and there you go. We used a value, and it's only showing the first 3 letters. The value, the first 3 letters. All right, well, that pretty well does it for data lists. We're going to move on. Create another field set here, and a legend. There we go. And this legend is going to be about select from a list. There we are. We're going to select a value from a list. So how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to be doing this. I'll group these together, and we'll give this a legend of select day of week. There we are. So now the user knows what to do. and we will now give them the ability to do it. Make a label and an input type equals radio button. Okay, so radio button, we can make a series of radio buttons and tell them to select one value. You can see just select it there. So we want to do this as a loop again. So let's do a for loop through every value, and we'll repeat this label over and over and over again. Alright, let's actually use the value. So we print it out and see what that looks like. There we go. Well, it's not quite working right because we're selecting multiple values and we can't unselect them. So we've still got to finish off here. We're going to give each radio button a value, and we'll just copy and paste the value there. And now we have to store that value somewhere, and we're going to select a day. That's what we'll call it. So let's go up here and create something called selected day, and we'll give it a reference, and we'll give it a default value of nothing. Alright, so does this work now? Look at that, it's working. Okay, let's do a refresh so we can see the variables. And there's our selected day variable where we're storing things, and you see it's only storing the first three letters. If we ever submit this to the server, we don't need the full word, we only need the first three letters. So there you go. That is how do we select from a list of values for using radio buttons. There is another way. Do a label, and that is using the select tag. Okay, so vModel, and again we'll just store it as selected day, and we can do a little short form here. We have to give the select model options, the select tag options, and we can do that the exact same way that we gave the data list options. So let's do that. There we go. What does that look like? Well, there's a nice drop down, and as we change our radio buttons, the select drop down changes, and as we change our select drop down, the radio button changes. It's two different ways of selecting a single value from a list of values. Both are valid, both work just fine. Okay, let's move on. Do another field set here, and here I'm going to be not selecting from a list, selecting multiple from a list. Multiple values from a list. There we are. Alright, so how do we select multiple values from a list? Well, I can go down here where we selected a single value from a list, and we can copy and paste. Much is going to be the same. We're going to change a few things here. This is no longer going to be radio. It's now going to be a checkbox, and we don't want to select it and store it in the same way, because selected day only stores a single value. We want to store multiple values, so let's create a new one, a new place to store it. Days equals ref, and here's where it gets a little different, where we want multiple values stored, so we say an array. So we've now got an empty array, and there we go. And let's do a refresh so we can see our variables here. Alright, selected days. And now, you see, we can start adding and removing days just by checking. And this is one of the nice things that Vue does for us. It allows us to, all we have to do is give it the array, and it knows for us how to add and remove values from that array without us doing the programming logic. It does the programming logic for us behind the scenes. Very nice and convenient. Well, you might be saying, well, can we do the same thing here with multiple values? And the answer is yes, we can. So copy and paste our select a single value, but we're going to change this to plural selected days, so it's now storing it in the array instead of the single value. And we're going to change add an attribute here called multiple, so it now will display multiple values. And you can see as we're checking and unchecking, it works either way. Very nice. Okay, well, we're going to do something a little bit more fancy here. Monday to Friday are weekdays. Saturday and Sunday are weekends. So I want to group these options together so that we can see weekdays, group them into weekdays and weekends. Okay, so how do we do that? We can do an option group. So let's put it around our options. There we go. So how do we've got index values from 0 to 6. What we want for weekdays is index, well, okay, first of all, we can do a label. Label equals weekday. All right, and now, okay, back to the indexes. We want index values from 0 to 4, anything less than 5. Well, where do we get index values from? When we're going through the loop, there we go. We've now got index values. And we can say v if, and we test our I is less than 5. So if our index is less than 5, it should show up just fine. And as we put in the weekday, you see it's nice and italicized there. So let's see what happens. And all our values disappeared. What's going on? Well, what's happening is we've got vif and v4 in the same tag. That causes problems. It doesn't work well. Do you run the for loop first, or do you run the if loop first? And in this case, it's running the if loop first. So we have to put these in different tags. So let's do that. Let's put it into the option group and let's see what that does. All right. Wait, what? Okay, it's giving us Monday to Friday, but it's also doing many more groups than it needs to do. All right, so we're not quite there yet. What we need is a template tag. A template tag doesn't show up. It gets repeated over and over again, but it doesn't display anywhere. So now, when we do it, we'll do our for loop. It won't show up like it does here. The option group was getting repeated every time, and it will only show up if we've got a weekday. And there we go. It's working. Okay, so now that we've got our weekdays, let's do our weekends. And our weekends have an index value greater than 4. So down here we go index greater than 4. Okay, let's see. There we are. We've now got our two groups, option groups. All right, so we can copy this, and you might say, does it work for the single select? And the answer is, of course it does. And it's going to be the exact same code. So you can see what it looks like before we save it. And now after we save it, there we go. Nice bolded headers. Okay, well, we have done quite well. And there we go. A nice bit of refresh so we can see everything. There's all our values. I'm just going to show you what we've done, what it looks like in Chrome. And we'll do a Chrome so we can see our variables here. It's almost the same. You can see our grouping in the multiple is not italicized. Our grouping, it looks a little different for the select a single list. Also, we should look at the data list and how that works. You notice there's an arrow pointing down there. That indicates that there is a data list available. You can see it looks a little bit different in how the drop down looks. And we've got a data list there, and it's giving us both the long form, the full written word, and the short form, the 3 letters for the value. The range works pretty much the same. Take a look at color. The color tags work differently on each browser. And I think that about does it. That's what we wanted to look at. Everything, I'll be putting this code up on GitHub for you to play and explore with. And thank you for watching. This has been an exploration of the Vue JavaScript framework and how it works with web forms. Goodbye.